Hello, my name is Kristen Lang. I'm an attorney ad litem with the L. David Shear Children's Law Center of Bay Area Legal Services. Today, I want to tell you about a case that exemplifies our work. But before we get into this case, which involves an amazing little girl named Jazzy, I want to talk to you about the importance of community support for Bay Area Legal Services, and in particular to the outcomes in this case. Before I went to law school, I was a 6th grade English teacher in the South Bronx, and I saw the barriers to success that at-risk children face every day through no fault of their own. One student in particular really impressed upon me the damage caused when an institution designed to ensure the well-being of a child so totally fails them. I'll call this student Nate. Nate was removed from by the department from his mother. He was placed with his father. He was removed from his father and placed into foster care. At the age of only 12, he ran away and he lived in the streets of Brooklyn for several weeks. When he was finally recovered, they placed Nate into a foster home in the South Bronx, which is quite far from Brooklyn. And they placed him with a foster mother who spoke only Spanish, while he spoke only English, so he was completely unable to communicate with his caregiver. It was at this point that Nate landed in my class. And surprisingly, he had behavioral issues. Unfortunately, no one involved in Nate's case provided us with any academic or personal background on him, so we were really at a loss as to how to meet his needs until we were able to cobble his story together ourselves. In the meantime, Nate suffered. Here's an example of an apology note he wrote me after one of his many outbursts in class. Dear Mrs. Lang, sorry for being very disrespectful and not listening to you. I'm just mad because I got left back and I wanted to be in 7th grade because I did a lot of work in my old school and I was sad. I want to blend in with this school, but no one wants to be my friend. Sometimes I really put myself down because I really have a bad life. Would you please accept my apology? After witnessing such injustice through the eyes of children I loved, I knew I wanted to commit my career to reducing the barriers to success for at-risk kids. Bay Area provided the perfect opportunity to do this work in my hometown. Unfortunately, I graduated in the midst of a financial crisis for legal aid, and the only way I was able to get my foot in the door at Bay Area was through a fellowship sponsored by my law school, Yale Law School. However, when that fellowship ended, there was a real chance I wasn't going to be able to stay. Thankfully, Bay Area was committed to keeping me, and because of their stewardship of prior community donations, they found a way to make that happen. Had this not occurred, I wouldn't have been there to represent Jazzy during the critical moments in her case. After hearing more about her life, I think you'll agree that the least she deserved was a passionate advocate in those case hearings that determined her future. See, Jazzy had a long history of abuse. Her first case began when she was only a few months old, and she suffered a fractured femur at the hands of her mother. That case ended with her mother's rights terminated and reunification with her young father. Just a few years later, when she was only 3 years old, she was removed from her father because of egregious child abuse. At this point, she was placed into foster care for several months before she was then placed with paternal relatives. This is when I began representing her in the spring of 2013. From that point forward, I met with Jazzy regularly and attended all court hearings to advocate on her behalf, while my social worker attended all meetings with the department to advance her interests outside of court. When Jazzy started displaying some odd behaviors, we successfully lobbied the department to ensure that a therapist would be assigned who could help her process her past trauma. And despite his treatment of her, Jazzy's father was the only caregiver she remembered, and she loved him. So we did everything we could to make sure he had every opportunity to address his mental health and anger issues. Unfortunately, by January of 2014, it was clear that the father wasn't going to take advantage of these opportunities, and he voluntarily surrendered his parental rights. Now at this point, the plan was for Jazzy to be adopted by those paternal relatives with whom she lived. This would allow her to continue to see her father under safe circumstances. Devastatingly, just a few weeks after the father signed away his parental rights, Jazzy was removed from these family members because of allegations that they beat her with an electrical cord and encouraged her to lie to investigators. When I heard of the allegations, I demanded that the department take Jazzy to the Child Protection Team, experts in verifying child abuse, and they were able to verify that this abuse had occurred. Using this evidence, I successfully defended against these relatives' attempts to intervene in her case and regain custody. At this point in Jazzy's case, our focus was ensuring that she was in a stable, loving home free of abuse, a forever home, as soon as possible. We worked closely with the department to ensure a quick process, and by June of 2014, she was placed in her home with prospective adoptive parents and her new sister, and it was an incredible fit from day one. She began bonding immediately. Just a few weeks after this placement, her paternal grandmother attempted to intervene in the case and adopt her. Now, because of her paternal grandmother's own abusive history as a caregiver, a prior denied home study through the department, and her lack of involvement since I had been Jazzy's attorney, I argued strongly against that intervention at oral arguments, providing the only defense against her motion. Thankfully, the judge ruled in our favor. And in October of 2014, Jazzy's life, which had begun so difficultly, finally took a turn for the better, and she was adopted by the Tribby family. And now I'd like to introduce you to Jazzy's mom, Jamie Tribby, who can tell you a bit more about what that meant for her and for her family.
When Kristen Lang asked if I would tell the story of our daughter Jazzy, it was a pretty easy decision to make. Not only do I love talking about my family, but the gratitude that I have towards Kristen and her team there at Bay Area Legal Services made it pretty easy to want to talk about our turning. See, although the process for us was fairly fast, it wasn't for our daughter Jazzy. As Kristen explained, Jazzy had been in and out of care since she was an infant, so by the time we met her, she was actually 5. In the summer of 2013, my husband Troy and I decided we wanted to expand our family through adoption again. We actually had adopted our daughter Peyton as a newborn through a private agency, but this time wanted to explore the foster care system in hopes of finding an older child. After finalizing all of our paperwork, our background checks, and doing all the required training, we were given an approved home study on April 4th, 2014, which was perfect timing, because little did we know we'd meet our daughter the very next day. On April 5th, we attended a match event. This is where all of the kids in care get to meet potential prospective adoptive parents. Now for us, our daughter Peyton has some special needs, so we knew that there were certain parameters we needed to stay amongst. And during the match event, we didn't think that we were probably going to find the right fit for us. As we were getting ready to leave, my husband Troy looked over and he pointed out Jazzy. I'll never forget seeing her. She was wearing a yellow and orange sundress, bright yellow flip-flops, carrying a bowling ball that quite frankly was as big as her, all while being fed grapes like she was Aphrodite from her foster mom. When we looked over, there was no way she could be bothered talking to 2 adults amongst the many that seemed to be clamoring for her attention. So instead, we decided to talk to her foster mom. What we found out during that conversation is that Jazzy had been with them just for a few short months when she had been placed there due to some abuse she had had from an aunt and uncle. We also learned that Jazzy was a fun-loving, sweet, vivacious, strong-willed little girl who was just looking for her forever family. So we left the event that day, but not before we notated on our card that we wanted to learn more about this little girl. On Monday, I called our adoption specialist to see what we could find out. Unfortunately, there was some paperwork delays and some mix-ups, so it took over a month before we could learn anything more. At that point, many families had expressed interest in Jazzy, but ourselves, along with 3 other families, were finally presented to the match committee. And on May 7th, what seemed to take forever, we got a call at 4:30 in the afternoon to be told that we had been chosen as Jazzy's forever family. We were elated that day. But unlike most parents who get to bond and kiss and hug their children on the day that they're born, we didn't get to do that because there was more paperwork delay. We were finally able to meet our daughter for the first time about a month later, and at this point, we were up against a clock. See, Jazzy's foster family was military, and now they were getting ready to move. So after only 13 short days of back-to-back visits, Jazzy moved in with us forever. Now, what should have been just the next 90 days of post-placement visits and us learning how to be a family of 4, since we had been a family of 3, didn't really happen that way. Instead, Kristen called to tell me that Jazzy's biological grandmother had decided to petition the courts for her. I'll never forget that day. I was walking through Walmart. I had gone there to get some crafts for the kids, and I stopped in the middle of the aisle and I tried not to cry. See, although Jazzy had only been with us for a few weeks at that point, she had already gone from calling us Mommy Jamie and Daddy Troy to just Mommy and Daddy. And more so, the bond that she was forming with her sister was indescribable. She was our daughter. And I told Kristen we would do whatever it took to fight for her. I was so angry. I even asked her if we needed to get our own attorney. And she said no. And not only did she say no, she said it with such passion and such conviction that I believed her. Now, anybody that knows me knows I'm a pretty controlling person, especially when it comes to my family and my kids. So for Kristen to be able to make me believe that she's got this and she was going to do whatever it took to keep Jazzy where she was supposed to be, which was with us, that's saying a lot. The next 90 days obviously were very stressful, but Kristen kept fighting for Jazzy over and over and over again. And she finally called to say that we had been approved to finalize. So on October 23rd, 2014, in a courtroom that was literally overflowing with family, friends, and coworkers, we went from what we called the Tribby Trio to the Tribby Quad. And we know we couldn't have done that without Kristen and her assistance and her fighting. Now, Jazzy's had a ton of people that have come and gone in her short life. She's had many people that have touched her case. But there's only 2 that we keep in touch with. 1 is her foster family before us, and 2 is Kristen. Now, we're the kind of people that we surround ourselves with a small circle of our family and friends, not a plethora of acquaintances. We do this because we want our kids only exposed to people that understand their unique needs and challenges and choose to love them anyways. Kristen's part of that small circle that we call family. I remember the first time we took Jazzy out of state. We actually stopped at the Georgia state line and we took a picture and we texted it to Kristen. Why? Because we know that we could do this legally, and we wouldn't have been able to do that without Kristen's fighting. I will continue to share all of these milestones with Kristen. Because of her, we will have them. And Jazzy had a rough life in the beginning, and it's not something I would ever wish on any child. But we tell people this: her past does not define her future. It merely helps us understand her present. Now that the negative is over, because of Kristen and all in Bay Area Legal Services, her future awaits her. As her mom, I am so excited to be able to witness all of these amazing things. I get to watch my little girl grow into a fun, loving middle schooler, potentially painful teenager, but an amazing, successful adult. And I plan on sharing all of these milestones with Kristen. I hope that this has given you a little bit of an insight to the journey that we've had and how important Kristen and all of them at Bay Area Legal Services were in getting us to that journey. But if you want to really know, how about we ask Jazzy? Hey, Jazzy. So, who's this over here?
Miss Kristen.
Miss Kristen. Well, who is Miss Kristen?
My best friend.
Your best friend? Why is that? What did she do for you?
She brought me forever food.
Yeah? And how long are you going to be with us?
Forever.
Now, if you don't think that the work that Kristen does in Bay Area Legal Services makes a difference, I don't know who should, but we sure do. So thanks for listening to our story.